Okay, sorry, got cut short again. Storage ran out again. I don't think that will be a problem again because I finally figured out how to delete more stuff. So, all right, so let's finish up the ancient world. So, Babylon. Um, what were we talking about with Babylon? Um, yeah, we talked about Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar. Yes, Nebuchadnezzar. Okay, so Nebuchadnezzar is probably the most well known king of Babylon. He was very similar to Hammurabi in that he kept some of the same sort of like disciplines or penalties. He was ruler during the Jewish Babylonian captivity. So when we see the Hebrews captured and deported, we see the prophets here: Jeremiah, Habakkuk, Daniel, Ezekiel, and Zephaniah. So some major and minor prophets here. It's kind of a big deal in Hebrew history. The Babylonians do go on to try to capture Egypt, but they were forced back. So you can see from our little map here that the Egyptian kingdom is down here, and Babylon couldn't quite get to it. Um, so what else? The Babylonians have a passion for art, education, architecture, and it soon became known as having a very beautiful city, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. They're known for their advances in astrology, especially. Um, so yeah, the people who are constantly seeking to expand on those skills that are not directly related to immediate physical survival. Now we're going to end the ancient world section here talking about the Persian Empire. Around about 553 or so, the Persians began making their move, and Babylon fell. Cyrus the Great was leading the Persians at the time, and he was known for his wise ruling. So very similar here to Solomon. He's known for wisdom. He was not like the Assyrians or the Babylonians in that he did not rule with as much terror. He retained local governments like what the Assyrians established, but used Persians as governors. He allowed conquered people to worship the gods they wanted and to retain their customs. So we see a long period of peace under Cyrus. Now, Cyrus, in some ways, is kind of, and I don't want to take this too far here, but he's kind of sort of looked at as like a messianic figure in Hebrew history as well, because he allows the Jews that are in captivity to return home. And this was a common practice by the Persians. So the prophets during this period of time, we have Ezra, Nehemiah, who's known for going back and rebuilding the wall around the temple and beginning to rebuild the temple, Haggai, Zechariah, Malachi. So again, we have this idea that the Persians are ruling with tolerance. And I have that in quotation marks because tolerance, what... the word tolerance is sort of relative, right? It was the largest governing empire up to that time. And just like the Assyrians, they do use a common language. Something else very interesting about the Persians and sort of one of the parts of their legacies is that coins are adopted and spread by the Persians. They do not invent coined money, but they take on the practice. So we start to see, there's still some bartering taking place, but between major cities and businessmen, now we start to see the handling of money, of hard currency, in place of using actual goods. Probably the biggest contribution from the Persians was a new religion called Zoroastrianism, named for the guy who founded it. This religion was not new in ideas, but it was very much a combination of ideas that had already been formed simply with the names of Persian gods. And ultimately, with Zoroastrianism, we see this idea that we are in a battle between good and evil. It's called moral dualism. Moral dualism. And only the righteous are able to cross over to paradise. So this, once again, that's probably one of the greatest parts of their legacies is Zoroastrianism, which lasts for quite some time, and it does sort of it's one of those things that early Christians it's one of those things that the early Christian fathers kind of have to combat against that, along with other philosophies and ideologies that have cropped up up until the time of Christ. Now, the Persians are eventually conquered. Now, look at that land. I mean, good night, nurse. They have this huge amount of land stretching from Egypt all the way over to modern-day India over here. This is huge. And they're going all the way up to Greece here. Huge amount of land. And they are going to be eventually conquered by a Greek, or at least by a Macedonian. Who claims himself to be Greek. So, concluding here, we need to see that trade and war are constant. They are mostly for profit and glory. And we do see trade and war also generating a great deal of cultural interaction. Technology innovations changed lifestyles drastically and left a lasting impact on the world. But ultimately, religion is the center of society, and it's going to remain so for the next several hundred years. So it takes a very long time before religion starts to make its way out, and science and other things begin to make its way in. That comes in Civ 2. So thank you for listening. This ends the ancient world discussion. We will pick up with ancient Greece.